Welcome to Beyond the Bottom Line on the future of women's awakening, fulfillment and success with Letitia Cook of Women Up Limited and Didi Ananda Rashmika of Mujer Despierta.
Hello, this is Beyond the Bottom Line, a monthly exploration about women's awakening and fulfillment so that all women may reach their full potential by being their full feminine selves. I'm joined in the studio by Didi Ananda Rashmika, and today we're talking about the ideals that have been imposed on us. Now, this is something that I find really interesting because most of us, I dare to say, really don't realise that a lot of ideals have been imposed on us. We think that our beliefs, our values are our own, but often they come from outside sources, whether it's our family, whether it's the schools we've been to, whether it's our colleagues at work, whether it's just the norms of society. But frequently we're not really aware that it's not our own self and our own vision that we're behaving, that we're talking with, that we're looking at. So Didi, what do you think about that? Do you think that this is something a lot of people have a challenge with? Do you think it's something that's quite common? What's your vision? What's your view?
Absolutely. Because especially when we grow up in a society or in an environment or in a neighborhood which is very similar to, for example, my family, I may not question anything that I've been taught to believe, and with the best intentions. It's nothing. I don't think any family would teach things like, well, I'm going to teach you this, and you're going to have lots of trouble with this later on. But when we believe what we automatically as kids believe, what is normal and right in our family, and if the larger environment of society, of neighborhood, school environment confirms the same, then those kind of belief systems get more ingrained. Mm-hmm. So without challenging those, or without the opportunity to challenge those, we miss out on seeing a broader picture than what we've been given from the very beginning. So I think, indeed, many times we're not aware until we come to a situation where our belief system which we thought to be solid, rock solid, to not be the only one and to not be automatically assumed by everybody else. And there's many other ways of doing things, which is a bit of a psychic shock at first. Yeah. But that kind of psychic shock or psychic clash is what drives our progress, really.
Yes. And I know, well, the 2 points spring up from that. One is the title of this program that we do, Beyond the Bottom Line.
Yeah.
I think if we have ideals that have been imposed on us and we're not aware of which ones are our own and which ones come from outside sources, then it's very difficult to actually go beyond the bottom line, because traditionally, well, not traditionally, but normally the bottom line is what people measure by. So for any of us who want to go a little bit further, we do need to know much more about ourselves and to find our true beliefs, our true values, what really does come from us, which leads on to my other point, which is about freedom. Because as I'm sure you know, and I'm sure anyone who's been listening before knows, I'm absolutely obsessed with finding freedom and true freedom and what freedom really is. And for me, freedom is in our thoughts before anything else. We have to be free to think what we want to think, why we want to think it, how we want to think it. And I think a lot of this is linked to the ideals that are imposed on us and to the way we view going beyond the bottom line. So for me, if we haven't got that true freedom in our head, the real total freedom, we can't really make objective decisions or choose where we want to go or our path, because we're still cluttered up with something that comes from the ideals that have been imposed on us.
I am not sure how, to which level we can be completely free from what we have been taught. We can learn to question, we can try to find other ways and everything like this, but well, supposedly Einstein said like the last thing a fish will discover is water, like something that's always around us.
Yeah,
we take for granted. And but within that sense of freedom, I think something you said earlier about this thing of beyond the bottom line, because if we, for example, this ideal that you need to get a good job that pays well so that you can have your house, your family, and everything well established, right? That's one thing that is very strongly taught in our culture, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. But what many will find is that following all of that, doing everything that they're supposed to be doing, might find that he or she is not happy.
Yeah.
So freedom is important, but I think the key the arrow has to be towards the happiness.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, when you ask people what do they want, okay, freedom too, because freedom gives that happiness. If the freedom doesn't give me happiness, the freedom doesn't mean anything to me.
Exactly. Yes.
So I agree, freedom of thought, and we have to question things that don't work for us, and have to have the ability to change the things that we want to change, but the happiness being the key point. And our thought of or our point behind the title of Beyond the Bottom Line is that there is much more that can give us happiness than this bottom line that we've always been taught to go for, to reach, to achieve, to attain.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And especially in terms of our special framework of women, is on top of all the conditioning regarding career, what kind of professions are more status worthy, social capital, what kind of job is more important. We have an additional challenge, which is the ideals that have been imposed on what it is to be a good girl or good woman.
Yes.
And if this good girl thing was emphasized a lot, and of course, I assume that most people would know a good girl. What I mean to say with this good girl is like, you adjust to this, and you have this kind of responsibility, and then you're a good girl. Like, which may have stifled some personal opinion earlier on.
Yeah.
Or which they're very good qualities to be able to adjust, to accept, to have responsibility. But at the same time, this own voice, your opinion is important. You can achieve what you want to achieve. All this more empowering stuff has to be balanced with all that responsibility. Not just be responsible, like be accepting. Just boys will be boys, but girls have to be responsible. I mean, not just that, right?
Yeah.
So I think we have an additional challenge with the career ideals, is the ideals of what it is to be feminine. Ideal femininity?
Yes.
I mean, we've moved on in the meantime. We're in 2018, but I read a book of the 1980s, mm-hmm. which surprisingly is still very relevant. But it referred to a research done among about 90 professionals in the psychology field, and they were asked to write a list of healthy attributes of men, attributes of a healthy woman, and attributes of a healthy human.
Yeah.
For a man, they had a list of 37.
Yeah.
For women, they had a list of 11. And the human ones were pretty much the same as the male ones.
Oh, really?
Well, now, of course, I'm talking 1980. But yes. Many of us were born before 1980.
Yes, me included.
And what you could see is that those 11 were very often the opposite of the male ones.
Really?
And yes, like a man is independent, a woman has need for companionship. He is very logical, she is more emotional, right? Now, there may even be truths to all of this, right? I'm not here to deny that women are more emotional than men. But the way it was stated that then the ideal human is basically like the ideal man, and we are the opposite. I mean, it was a book on self-esteem.
Well, I think they're wrong, I have to say.
But basically, if this is what is kind of the way of thinking of these mental health professionals, right? And then, of course, there's many problems that come out of this. But basically, it's a lose-lose situation that if a woman follows what is expected from her in that kind of society, in that era, right? If she follows that, and she'll be obedient and this and this and this and this and this, and that's not valued in the society, means she's still a nothing, even though she's a good wife, a good woman, a good, right?
Yeah.
If she would go against it, she would be branded unfeminine.
Yes.
So I think the whole idea of what femininity is, or what is the ideal, or maybe there is no ideal. What is your ideal, at least? The ideals.
Yes.
Too general. Well, what is your ideal? Because a lot of us also, your experience, my experience, when we've worked in a male-dominated workplace, that feminine aspect has to be put aside in order to be competing in that kind of environment.
Yeah.
And then I may find I can't be happy there.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? So that's another clash.
Yeah.
But if the ideal you're pursuing is, but I need a good job and I need to be able to make it, because when I become a manager, then I've made it.
Yeah.
And that goes at the expense of your happiness.
Yeah.
It's time to review those ideals.
Yeah.
If you have to throw out anything of your own, let's say a woman who is more compassionate, seeking cooperation and everything like this, is something which is a very, very, very important part of female nature, and which is excellent in mothers.
Mm-hmm.
If that's not recognized in the workplace necessarily, but it's at the same time what the world needs so much.
Yes.
We can't continue running the world as if it's a corporation where we can just, get rid of things we don't need. We have one planet and we're not looking after it.
Yeah.
We have a greater crisis in mental health than ever before. All the information is available to everybody, but we have more people depressed and I mean, we don't have to go into all the dark sides of the world at the moment to know that it needs improving. And what it needs is more of this femininity.
Yes. Yeah. And so how do you think we can really dig down about ideals to see which ones are our own choice and which ones have been imposed? Whether it's about the social community that's around us, or the social norms that are around us, whether it's about ourselves as women, as in women outside of work, the mothers, the sisters, the daughters, the friends, the whatever, or whether it's about women in relation to their careers, or even men. I'm sure there's a few men who are listening in as well who are just as interested about this as all of our women colleagues. But how do you think we can start to dig down and discover what really is us personally and what comes from outside? And once we've discovered that, whether we should try and change it just for ourselves as individuals, or whether we should try and spread the word more to other people to try and give them the same awareness. Because a lot of the time when we're thinking about ideals, it can either be like a group thought or it can be an individual. But with what we're talking about, particularly becoming aware of what's being imposed on us and what is our own free thought, I would say a large percentage of the population isn't really aware of any of this at all. So once we have found out how we can open ourselves more to the way we think about this, should we then also spread the word, or should we just keep it to ourselves and not try to do too much propaganda? I mean, I like spreading the word personally, because when I believe in something, I just bang on about it, right?
Okay. One comment regarding men. Indeed, actually, when we're talking about all of this, I always emphasize with people, I'm not saying anything against men. I'm rather, there's things that I don't want to accept or continue regarding the systems of domination or patriarchy or everything like this. And I think many men are, victim is a strong word, but of the same system. If a man wants to be at home to spend more time with the family, but the ideal is you should work and provide for the family and the rest is not important, leave it up. That is not fair either.
Yeah.
So yes, the ideals are imposed on all of us, and to create a better society, all of us have to be free from that also.
Yeah.
I think one way to discover what your programming is listen to when you criticize others and when you criticize yourself, and write it down. Because most of the time we're repeating something that we've heard 100 times or 1,000 times before when we were little.
Yes.
When we're criticizing the neighbor, the colleague, someone on the street, what they look like or whatever, right?
Yes.
Or for example, if you see someone who's not very nice but he's becoming very rich, and it's like, you see the rich always have or they're always the bad guys, right? And the poor are holy people. It's not like that.
No,
absolutely not. But if that is something, when you're criticizing someone who's rich and not very friendly, you're probably repeating conditioning you've received before.
Yeah.
The same about yourself. When you're criticizing yourself, where does that criticism come from? Usually it's from things that have been imposed.
Yeah.
Right? So it's very good to listen to criticism. Our critical voice can be very useful. We can learn to understand ourselves.
Yes.
We would think it's something bad. No, well, we have it, so let's just work with it. Let's just use it for something that can be good for us.
Yeah.
I think the critical voice, because criticism usually comes from somewhere deep inside, not necessarily from my conscious mind and from being present in the situation. Right?
Yeah.
Another. It's very good to use that critical voice to understand yourself better, and it's Byron Katie who's developed this process called the work.
Yes.
And she wrote a book about it, Loving What Is.
Excellent book.
Says, when you're having a problem with people and you write, or with a person, and you write all these things down, she has a certain system for that. And then you use it to understand yourself and what is your medicine, because you can't change what's already happening. And she says at the beginning of that exercise, please be as critical as you want. We've been told our whole life not to be critical, but it's still what we're best at. Don't try to be spiritual here.
Yes.
And whenever I read that instruction, it makes me smile, because it's true.
Yeah.
It's like, no, we shouldn't be doing this. Yeah, but we still do. So use it to understand yourself better.
Yeah. Yeah.
And regarding whether the change should be individual or collective, well, I hope over time it'll be more and more collective movement, because only individual, that's going to take a long time, right? But of course, it should start from the individual.
Yeah.
And what I've noticed with some drastic changes, of course, I've gone through in over the years, or sometimes very suddenly, is when I allow myself to be free from, for example, certain conditioning or certain ideals. Or for example, to give you an example, when I left my PhD, several people told me, I wished I could do the same.
Yes.
And I'm like, well, you can. And I know, but, because conditioning or fear or not wanting to sacrifice what it would take to do that. But because I did it and people say, yes, well, actually, I want that too. And then if someone has the capacity, the opportunity, the strength, whatever, it's basically, if I'm being myself, the other people around me would feel more free to be themselves too.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's kind of almost like you allow that space.
Yes.
So the same, if I question the ideals that have been imposed on me in the past, I help others to start questioning that too.
Yeah.
So it starts from the individual, but it has to go to the collective. And of course, if we have a larger platform, like we are speaking now, we're not just talking the two of us, but there's people listening.
Yes.
We can affect more people, because ideally we would create a world in where that imposition is not going to limit people from the beginning, which they later on have to fight against.
Yes. It's interesting with you giving the example of your leaving your PhD, because the other day I was speaking to a childhood friend. We grew up together from, we were in nappies together, basically. And she stayed in the area that we're from. I mean, I don't know, we both, she stayed pretty much in the area that we're from. I think she went to London for a short period and then she went back to the same area. Whereas I've been living and working, I think it's 7 countries so far. And I've taken my kids with me. I've taken my husband's with me. It's just been a totally different path to the path that she had. And the other day she was saying, oh God, I've never done anything. I've always stayed here. I've never really tried to move out. And obviously she felt upset, or almost like she was lacking because of that. Whereas I was thinking, God, she's so lucky. She knows what she wants. She knows what she's doing. She's so stable. She's free. She doesn't have to always worry about this, and this. And with what you're now saying about the leaving your PhD and things like that, sometimes I think with the choices and the ideals, it's almost like the grass is always greener on the other side. And it's not. It's just from the ideals that we've grown up with. Some of us, like for me, traveling around the world, my family thought that was completely normal, completely acceptable. And, there was never any doubt or hesitation or criticism. It was a normal thing to do. Whereas for my friend, it wasn't. It would have been something really difficult to do. And so I've never felt particularly brave or courageous, or that I was doing something different by traveling around the world. So I think you leaving your PhD was a big step and a big choice. But sometimes things that seem a brave step to others, it isn't. And this is really coming back to the fact of the ideals that are imposed on us. So for me, moving around wasn't anything special. It was great fun. It was lovely, but it wasn't a difficult decision. It wasn't me making a adventurous choice or something like that. So sometimes I think we need to go beyond looking at what others have done, and as you say, think back to the critical voice, and see where it's coming from, because we're all so different and we all have such different backgrounds, even within the idea of the programming that we've received. It can be totally different, and we get very hung up on what other people are doing or what other people have done, and we think that we're not good enough, or we think that we have to do this or we have to do that, because we think that we're lacking if we don't. But just taking the example of me and my childhood friend, she thinks she's lacking because she didn't do what I did. But she comes from a totally different way of programming, and she'd never thought that what I did wasn't actually breaking the mold and wasn't being different. It was what my family does. So I was actually being very normal for my family.
Yeah.
And sometimes we put ourselves under extra pressure because we see what other people have done.
Well,
and
this comparison thing
Yeah.
is something that is never helpful. I mean, it's not helpful. It's not useful, especially when on top of that we're feeling not good enough.
Yeah.
Because for her background, it would have been a huge step to do that.
Yes.
And she wasn't shown that way, or that wasn't normal, and she followed something else, which probably reflected the ideals that were taught to her from a young age.
Yes.
The important thing is to accept the choices that we've made.
Yes.
And if she still wants to travel, do it, you know, like this thing of not feeling good enough. It just struck me now what you said. What I've noticed is that it's much, much stronger in societies that are predominantly Christian.
Yes, exactly.
And I've lived in countries where Christians are a minority, but this idea of not being good enough, of this guilt feeling, of this, well, almost sinner complex, unfortunately is a side effect of the religious ideas in the society, even if the family is not particularly religious.
Yeah.